Soon and very soon, we are going to see the horse. Soon and very soon, we are going to eat the curry. Welcome, welcome, welcome to another episode of The Dissection. We have been waiting, eagerly anticipating the information, evidence from one brown envelope Mogotsi. And today was the day, his first day at the commission. I was very curious myself to see his demeanor, his overall strategy, what kind of evidence he would be adducing, exculpatory evidence in particular, because he has to prove and disprove certain elements that then will make him more credible to the public, to the commission. And I was very curious what his game plan is going to be. So let's dissect this thing to the bone. Let's break it down so that it's forever and consistently broke. Now, Brown Mogotsi has been a name that has been confusing and intriguing in all of this Mkhwanazi versus Sibiya, in all of this horse curry behavior saga. I say so because initially the media itself seemed very hesitant to talk about this man, to talk about the role that he was playing, his bio, his history. And when he showed up on screens at some point after people started asking, who is Brown Mogotsi? There was still a lot of, ambiguity around his exact nature. At some point, they were calling him a businessman. At some point, they were calling him a CR17 campaigner. At some point, they shifted and called him just an informer, a fixer. Which one is he? Businessman, CR17 campaigner, fixer? Maybe he's all of the above. Maybe he's none of the above. But what's clear is that Brown Mogotsi is part of this mix. And today, we started getting his version and some clarity around who this guy is and where he fits in. Brown seems to be very connected to everybody and to this story. He was messaging, he was meeting everybody. He messaged General Mkhwanazi. That message, I think, is the one that got him into this world of pain. Then he messaged General Sibiya. He messaged Fikile Mbalula, who distanced himself from him. And there was a lot of, bars being exchanged in the public around Fikile Mbalula as well as Brown Mogotsi, because Brown Mogotsi actually made some very scathing allegations around Fikile Mbalula in particular. He was messaging Cedric Nkabinde, the chief of staff for the Minister of Police, and also he was messaging the Minister of Police, according to the allegations, Senzo Mchunu. He also was, on the other side, messaging Vusi Matlala about police matters, giving advice to Vusi Matlala around how they could actually get members of the Gauteng counterintelligence operation arrested, advising Matlala to open cases of assault, to claim that certain things were stolen. So he's been a character of interest in all of this. He was also collecting money from Vusi Matlala, ostensibly for the Minister of Police, for ANC events, knows Matlala, knows him quite well, to the point where they're exchanging bank details and discussing task team being closed. The task team that is harassing you has been closed. I want to arrange meetings for you and Sibiya. And the dockets that we were all talking about yesterday were also being discussed between Matlala and Brown Mogotsi. And we mustn't forget, Vusi Matlala is no, seller of cookies. He ain't a Girl Scout, Boy Scout, none of those. This is a man who has been implicated in a variety of serious crimes, is facing serious allegations, and is alleged to be one of the notorious criminals participating in horse curry behavior in South Africa in a variety of industries, sectors, including kidnapping, hijacking. Not a man of, that's not the guy you take with you to your Sunday lunch after church, basically. Now, Brown is also intriguing because of this identification as a fixer for, not a fixer, but rather a campaign fundraiser for CR17 campaign. This is the president's presidential campaign. And in early reports, he was being referred to as that. So now, coming into the commission, all of these questions would have been important to clarify. Who is this chap? What does he do? Who is he doing it for? And we started getting some answers around that. Critically, I want to say one thing which you need to know. The commission is doing a phase 2 process right now. They've listened to the accusers. Now they're listening to the implicated persons and allowing them to give their side of the story. Brown Mkhwanazi is the first implicated person who is going to bat. And the way that they're listening to the testimony of these implicated persons is going to be twofold. Number one, they're going to let you tell your story. Tell us your version. And this part is going to be soft. They're only going to ask clarity-seeking questions. But in part two, then they're going to start giving a proper cross-examination, testing the evidence, testing the claims, testing the logical coherence of the versions which are being presented. So today, Brown Mogotsi got the easy side of the exam, so to speak. He's got the part where he just simply gives his version, explains his side of the story. And Brown came into today after having tried to create some hype, some narrative around how there was an attempt on his life, his car got shot. Looking at that story, I think it's safe to say it was a hoax. It wasn't a real story. It was an attempt to build stature around his own self. Now, we got clarification today about one thing: the role of Brown Mogotsi in the world of policing. And that's been a question that I think has been on many people's mind. Certainly it was on my mind, because I've been thinking to myself, how does Brown fit into the world of policing, national security? Now, what Brown Envelope Mogotsi says is that he firstly was in Umkhonto weSizwe between 1993 and 1995, which is where he learned covert strategies and methodologies and how he got into the world of intelligence. He says he became a police informant in 1999. He says then he became a contact agent in 2009, and says at some point in 2020, he was asked by the Deputy National Commissioner of Crime Detection to do a task for him. And that general was General Mkhwanazi, who then passed away. He says after Mkhwanazi died, he was told to lay low, and he only got back into active duty in 2024. And it's unclear what led to this new tasking, how he actually got involved. Hopefully questions will be asked that clarify that timeline and that sequence of events about, you said you were laying low, how did you come back in? And it looks as if he then gets back into the world of criminal intelligence through General Sibia, who now occupies the same position as Mkhwanazi, that being Deputy National Commissioner of Crime Detection. So that explains some of his access, some of his contacts, and some of his relationships with the world of policing, the world of intelligence, and I guess gives us clarity as to how he comes into the mix. He keeps overplaying, though, his role, because he's got this person who gives a mandate, right? Which let's assume is Sibia. Then he's got handlers. He identifies one. He says there are two handlers. He doesn't identify the other one, gives the name to the commission. Then he keeps making claims as if he was the police. He was the one doing the arrests. He was the one doing this, and the third. And I think that may be an exaggeration of his role. But let's look at what he claimed. So, and then I'll give you my assessment of those claims as we go. So, firstly, Brown Envy. That's what I'm going to call him now. Brown Envy. When I say Brown Envy in your head, Brown Envelope Mogotsi. So Brown Envy claims that King Misuzulu and General Mkhwanazi are CIA agents. I'm sorry. I'm trying to take everything he says seriously, but this part. He says King Misuzulu and General Mkhwanazi are CIA agents. He says that they were activated after South Africa took the Israel and Gaza matter to the ICJ. He says they activated because there were concerns by some Israelis who have mining interests in Richards Bay that their coal business and coal exports would be affected somehow, and therefore the general and the king were activated. He also claims that General Mkhwanazi worked to suppress investigations into attempted murders of people within the faction of Prince Simagade. And Prince Simagade, if you are not aware, is challenging the claim to the Zulu throne that is currently occupied by King Misuzulu. King Misuzulu has been coronated. I think he's won rounds of this legal dispute. I don't think it's going to change, but Prince Simagate has been consistently claiming that he is the legitimate heir to the throne and actually should be on the throne. And apparently from what is being said by Brown is that, you know, he was approached by part of the king's delegation or faction, sorry, not the king, the prince's faction delegation, saying that, listen, we have been experiencing attempts on our lives, intimidation, but these cases are not being actioned in KwaZulu-Natal. So he says all of this, and this is an interaction where he gets asked a question by the commissioners and also the evidence leader. Take a look.
The hearsay part, it becomes something of a general knowledge. One must investigate because it's a suspicion. Now, if a source says to you, King Misuzulu and Lieutenant General Mkhwanazi were recruited by the CIA, you start paying attention to everything they do.
May I please, it's a simple question.
Okay.
I don't even understand why you would dispute what I'm suggesting to you. In my language, which is isiXhosa, hearsay is undiva.
Oh.
I've asked my co-commissioners what it is in Setswana, and they tell me that it's mabaribari. Waitsibantwe, waitsiba mabaribari.
It's true.
You know that?
Yes, I know that.
So all I'm asking you
That's
is
correct.
whether you accept hore.
It is yes.
Mabaribari.
Yes. It was Mabaribari when it was first presented.
Yes, I'm
That's
not
correct.
asking about what you would then establish afterwards.
Thank you.
Kibacha utsiba hore ki mabaribari na. Fair.
Hey.
Ne?
Thank you.
Kiwona?
Kiwona.
Thank you.
Hey, bubile monate ka waka hopole ditlepe tsaka man.
Thanks. I don't want you to misunderstand me.
That's correct.
Hearsay evidence is admissible in this commission. The only issue would be its probative value. That is what weight we attach to it. So it's still admissible. Yeah.
Thank you.
But my next question then is, what detail, if any, did your source give you on how the source knew that General Mkhwanazi and King Misuzulu had been recruited by the CIA?
Commissioner, may Commissioner rephrase the question? I don't.
What detail did your source give you on how they, that is your source, knew that General Mkhwanazi and King Misuzulu had been recruited by the CIA? Did your source just say, do you know, General Mkhwanazi and King Misuzulu were recruited by the CIA without more?
Yeah, it is without more. You'll just say, King Misuzulu comes, he's been staying somewhere in the US. You check, and then you see how General Mkhwanazi speaks. He always tells you he was trained by the American and what. That's where everything started, commissioners. And indeed, even in front of here and in our talk, he spoke about being trained by the American. Yes.
I'll tell you that I actually hold a degree from the United States of America. Does that make me a CIA operative? I'm scared I asked that question because you just might say yes.
No.
No. But can you please respond?
No, I cannot say that, commissioners. Investigation as it comes. Someone may say that, not to me, to another agent, to whoever, may say Commissioner Matlala is a CIA. He may say that, not to me. Yes, that.
Thank you.
But just picking up on the chair's question, apart from the fact that General Mkhwanazi says that he received some training in the United States, did your source give you any information to support his allegation that General Mkhwanazi and King Misuzulu are CIA agents?
Yeah. You see, when information came, commissioners, it further talks to the treatment which got the combination of General Mkhwanazi and Misuzulu, King Misuzulu, how they treated the brother to King Misuzulu, Prince Makati. The investigation took us to that extent that we ended up having to meet me.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. Even though the question is not mine, I do not understand the question to be about what you established later.
Oh, okay.
It's about the stage at which you get the information.
No, there was nothing on top of that. Thank you. Understand.
Let me give you my impression around this particular claim, and then I'll go to the second major claim that he makes. So it was curious to me that Brown Mogotsi seemed reluctant to mention King Misuzulu and only wanted to focus on General Mkhwanazi. I found that to be odd. You know, the commissioner had to read the name of the king into the allegation and get him to respond. In addition to speaking about General Mkhwanazi, he had to speak about that. It looked to me like he was afraid of committing to that angle, particularly making such allegations about the king, because the king is a person of serious stature within the Zulu community. And, you know, to quote a former deputy president, umuntu uyalimala. Umuntu uyalimala, basically. So that one basically means when you talk about the king, you know, that can end up in serious situations where you may not want to find yourself in as somebody who makes those kind of comments. So that could have been the reason he was hesitant to say it, even though he wrote it in his statement. But I just thought it was a curious thing. Now, the thing which I find damning for him in this version is that he was asked an important question around these allegations. And every time he was asked this question, he could not respond in a satisfactory manner. What was the question? The question was, what evidence, if any, did your source provide to support the claim that you're sharing? It's hearsay evidence, but we accept hearsay evidence, says the commissioner. What evidence, if any, did your source provide to support the claim? Each time he was asked this question, he waffled, he tried to misdirect the audience, but he would not necessarily be allowed to do that by the evidence leader and the commission, because they came back and said, okay, can you answer now? What evidence, if any, did your source provide to support the claim? And it's important for you to be cognizant of this, because we must believe on the basis of good reasons and good evidence. We must not just accept anybody's version simply because they just said it. We must ask for rationale, and we must ask for verification and proof. He could not provide any support to support these very explosive claims, right? You're just claiming people are part of the CIA. You're claiming this has to do with the ICJ case. You have to substantiate that and show serious substantiation for this, because this takes this issue to another level. It can get Trump and them involved. It can get a lot of people involved in a way which can be quite damaging for the economy, for a lot of issues affecting the country. So when you come and make that kind of an explosive claim, you need to have all of the paperwork, all of your ducks in a row. He did not do that. And as a result of failing to give any support, I can only conclude that these claims are baseless and they are fabrications. You know, the reason why hearsay evidence is generally inadmissible, is because you cannot examine and cross-examine the person who gave that evidence. Someone says, someone told me this, and the third. That could be true, but it could also be a fabrication. It could also be mendacity, amanga, inganegwane, and what Brown Mogotsi called legend making. Legend making is a little sideshow in this story, but we need to discuss it briefly, because Brown Mogotsi comes in and says, listen, I'm a contact agent, and part of what I do is I have to create a backstory. I have to create a cover. And part of my backstory is that I am Brown Mogotsi, but I'm actually speaking to you about intelligence issues in a way that is trying to make you panic, so as I can see whether or not you have the information. And he tries to give that as an explanation as to how and why he was messaging General Mkhwanazi as part of his legend making. But part of this legend making is just lying. And Brown is somebody who could have just been lying in this instance, because he can then hide behind this thing of a source told me, somebody told me, a little birdie told me, trust me, bro. These are all versions of the same thing. So without corroboration, because if you're saying you're a contact agent, you got this information, but then you investigated it, etc., now you have to adjust the files. Otherwise, we have to conclude that you are lying, right? We have to conclude that, because without any other verification, this is just fantasy, and we can't take it any further. Then he said something about John Wick and Begi Cele. This part was explosive, and he may have something here because he knows John Wick. John Wick is his colleague. John Wick is angry in prison, and maybe they've decided that, look, we're going to take someone down with us. This is what he had to say about John Wick and Begi Cele.
There is something called Boko Haram. It was a presentation, intelligence presentation, which was presented to the former minister, Bheki Cele. I'm going to give a bit description about that presentation. Commissioners, it was 6 pages. The Boko Haram, it talks to a man who was known as John Wick. This John Wick appears on the presentation of the intelligence presentation which was presented to Minister Begi Cele. It has a picture of John Wick, his ID number. It has his previous convictions, pending cases, and everything, all the matters that were withdrawn against him. It was in 2018 October, Commissioner. Commissioner, John Wick is Vusi Ket Matlala. Even the picture is showing that. Now, former Minister Bheki Cele says now, he only met him in December 2024. Now, one will ask again, he even said he didn't know him, he invited him to his house, and it was a freebie. He had to take it. And I should also share, it's within those messages between me and Ket Matlala. The story that Minister Bheki Cele was in Ket's house. It is true. We actually had to arrest Minister Cele at that time. He was affected by this POCA Act, the Proceeds of Crime Act. There was an arrangement. I believe when you get to those messages, one will be able to allude to the commission exactly what happened. It was during the ANC Lekgotla, when General Cele was in that house. And the basis which I also refer to, I'm saying when we reach there, it's written in my statement, the monies which Ket Matlala alleges to have given to Bheki Cele, they are there.
On the timing, when was Minister Cele in Mr. Matlala's house in relation to the award of the contract?
It was after the contract was awarded, Commissioner. The contract was awarded last year, and the information said, and it's not only former minister, it goes to General Masemola also. It's not only General Cele. When the information came, they referred, of course, to General Begi Cele, that he has interest in that.
So Brown Mogotsi is claiming that Vusi Matlala, Wetsamanyala, is John Wick. The famous John Wick, not the one you guys may know for the Americans, the Australians, the British, all of the people watching overseas. Shout out to you. Shout out to you. We have a big audience around the world now, UK, Australia, you name it. And if you're from there, please tell us in the comment section. So there's a John Wick that you know from the movies. Then there's a John Wick from Mamelodi that we know. So let's talk about that John Wick. Let me give you some context, because Vusi Matlala Wetsamanyala is claiming that John Wick and Begi Cele, there's more to the story than Begi Cele told in Parliament. He says Begi Cele knew information long prior to his appearance in Parliament around who exactly Vusi Matlala Wetsamanyala is. And he did not give the full story in Parliament. That's the version. So John Wick in the South African context is a vigilante who was said to have cleaned up gang activity in Mamelodi, Pretoria, and other parts of Tshwane where there were problems. There was a gang in Mamelodi and other parts of Pretoria which was causing problems, Bronco Spruit and other parts of Tshwane. It was causing lots of problems in the townships of Pretoria, basically. That gang is Boko Haram. There are 2 other gangs which you need to be aware of, which were dominating in this gang activity, Farasi and Al-Qaeda, something to that effect. I don't know why these gang leaders love using the names of terror groups in part of their naming or nomenclature, so to speak, but clearly that's something that was happening in Mamelodi. So between August and October of 2021, 7 members of the Boko Haram gang were killed in Mamelodi. And one of the people who was killed was Philip Nguni, who was said to be the leader of the Boko Haram gang and linked to many of the crimes that were being committed in the community. So at the time, John Wick was being praised as a savior of Mamelodi and somebody who brought and restored order to the community. And these gangs were doing a lot. They were extorting. They were participating in other types of crimes. They were collecting money from shop owners, street vendors, lots of violence, lots of killing that was happening in Mamelodi as a result of this Boko Haram gang and associated gangs or rival gangs. Now, when the John Wick issue happened, there was some narrative or explanation that this could have been done actually by a rival gang in the name of cleansing the community of the gang violence, but actually as a consolidation of power. Now, if Vusi Matlala is John Wick, and apparently John Wick had a Facebook account where he was actually posting and explaining what he is doing, even ended up being a popular song, an Amapiano song, right? So, when I think about the Boko Haram issue, it's actually interesting because this could be the explanation of the escalation of the powers of Vusi Matlala Wetsamanyala in the gang space in South Africa. So he could then have become the Don of Tshwane, the Don of Pretoria, handling all of the drug activities there, and could explain now why DJ Somebody and DJ Vintos and other people were now dying as a result of disputes over the drug industry, right? Because we know that these things happened. And we also can see that there was some contestation with Joe Sibanyoni because he attempted also to murder Joe Sibanyoni, according to the allegations. So this explains some of the stuff. But now, if Bheki Cele knew him at the time and did not divulge to Parliament that he was aware of who this guy is, then it means that he didn't give Parliament the full story, and that may need to be clarified further. Now, you want to know something interesting? When I looked into stories about Boko Haram, as I was just doing a deep dive into the backstory of Boko Haram, I saw a video by an analyst, a crime expert. Guess which one? Calvin Rafadi. If you guessed Calvin Rafadi, then you got the right answer. He was one of the analysts I saw speaking about Boko Haram to Newsroom Africa. And I was like, he's the same person who we saw messages from, sending messages to Vusi Matlala, asking for money for rent so that he could focus. Also, Calvin Rafadi is interesting because he's supposed to be a tech expert or something. And at some point we heard from Witness C that actually, it was, somebody with some technical expertise who cleared the phones of Vusi Matlala when they did the search and seizure, when they were looking for the person who was kidnapped, that being, who's that person who they kidnapped? The businessman that they kidnapped, who then was referred to by Vusi Matlala as being part of the underworld with them and part of their criminal activities. Just remind me again in the comment section what that guy's name was. So that section, that issue of the Boko Haram issue is something that will have to be explored further. It's something that is important to explore because it's important to establish if this intelligence report does exist, if Bheki Cele was aware of the identity of John Wick, if Vusi Matlala is John Wick. Look, I've seen on social media, people have said Vusi Matlala is John Wick. I know this lady who's familiar with some characters within Mamelodi who also told me off the record that Vusi Matlala is John Wick and they were aware of his conduct and activities for quite a while in Mamelodi. She's from Mamelodi. I won't disclose her identity, but I've sometimes spoken to people off the record who've told me these type of things. But I need to verify further before I tell you on the screen some of the stuff. So I don't know if Bheki Cele will be called because he's not an implicated person so far. But I'm sure that there are ways that the commission can get this information, and maybe even Parliament will be able to get more information because they also are going to speak to Brown Mogotsi and to Vusi Matlala himself. Now, from the commission side, Mogotsi says there's an intelligence presentation that was made to Brown Mogotsi. He talks about whether it's an orange document. So that needs to be looked at. He says that happened in October of 2018. That document can then be sourced by the commission as proof and corroboration of that version. I take the first claim that was made by Brown Mogotsi as nonsense. That of CIA and, the king and General Mkhwanazi being part of that is just preposterous. That actually takes down a lot of his credibility as a witness in this commission. But he does know Vusi Matlala. He was messaging him, telling him issues, discussing matters of IPID, coming up with strategies, trying to counteract the investigation, collecting monies from him. Him and Vusi Matlala are friends, clearly. They are friendly enough to talk about these type of things with each other. So if Vusi Matlala is John Wick, Brown Mogotsi would know. And also, this is the first time that he tried to give a footnote, a citation to say, there is this intelligence document, go and find this intelligence document. So I take this part of his information that he presents to the commission as being a little bit more credible, but it doesn't do much to dismiss the genuine concerns that exist. You are associates with a gangster who is implicated in hoshkari behavior of the highest level. And simply because you can say, but Bheki Cele also knows him, that doesn't take away from the gravity of the issues that we're investigating here, that at some point Vusi Matlala is so well connected to Sibiya, to other people, that is able to circumvent certain things, get police tenders, and participate in crimes and criminal activities which are destroying South Africa, killing children, destroying the economy. So even if Bheki Cele goes down with you guys, that doesn't take away from the credibility of what has been said by General Mkhwanazi, what has been said by General Khumalo. And that's something that I think needs to be pointed out. Now, Brown Mogotsi also places Sibiya in a bit of a tricky situation. And he tries to explain before Sibiya has to come why some of that is not problematic. He says he met Sibiya last year. Sibiya said he met him in January. That already contradicts their versions. Sibiya hasn't come to the commission, but he said that at the ad hoc committee. Then Brown says, well, he didn't want to discuss that because, I was a contact. I was going to go in camera. But now they've got a problem. Brown Mogotsi seems to be having a conversation with Sibiya about what to say. That is collusion. That is collusion. And that's something that could bring Sibiya into trouble, because why are you colluding with this guy to testify to the commission? That could be in and of itself an attempt to obstruct and defeat the ends of justice. Right? Overall, because if you guys are comparing notes now, you're supposed to give the truth as you know it, not necessarily the truth as I discussed it with Sibiya. So he's going to have a problem there. So I don't know if you guys are watching. This is part 1. I'm going to come back with the part 2, and then we're going to keep assessing everything that has happened at the commission. But let me know your thoughts, because hey, Tupac wasn't lying. It's a movie, a telenovela, a Jiga Majiga. It's a series, a drama. He wasn't lying in that song, Mzansi Don't Cry. And soon and very soon, we are going to see the Hosh. Soon and very soon, I will meet you in the comments. Till the next one.